Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today I want to share my opinions on this new Sitivien knife. This is the model ST-124 in D2 blade material, G10 handles. I believe this model also comes in just black G10, but I got these ones because I'll be able to dye them in the future to whatever color of my choosing. So this knife is extremely impressive because of its execution of the access lock. I'm not sure what they're naming the lock, but essentially it's the access lock. It's constructed exactly the same as what's on, the benchmade Osborne 940 and my bug out. So, but in my opinion, this $30 knife is way smoother and way easier to operate than the Osborne. The Osborne, I have taken it apart multiple times, and it's just, it's not as smooth as I'd like it to be. I've cleaned it out. It is on washers, I understand that, versus bearings like this one over here. But this is an almost $200 knife. And yeah, sure, you can argue that there's different fit and finish elements that make it, and bring it up to that price point. But for what you're getting here, this is just freaking sweet. So yesterday I did take it apart and clean it out. I did, I would say, hard use of this knife. I used it for a bunch of gardening tasks and even some food prep. And I did take it to work a lot and just play with it continuously because I really wanted these Omega springs to break in properly. It was really, really tough to actually disengage it, but now it's pretty sweet. So it does take a little bit more effort than, the Osborne. The Osborne now with, having the, newfound dexterity and finger strength to actuate this one properly. Doing with the bug out, it's almost weightless. The bug out, it still has pretty good action. It's pretty close. But definitely a lot. I guess. It's smoother, I guess, with the bug out. And this guy is just, they feel softer. And in size, I guess the width of the handles, it's a pretty big difference, honestly. It makes the Osborne kind of feel like a toy, even though we all know it's a very capable knife. I do love using the Osborne and taking it to work just as much as the bug out. But this is just a much more satisfying feeling knife. It fills the hands rather well. It has some jimping right up here. This is just a thumb stud and I guess access lock deployment knife. But right about here, this kind of bugged me a little bit. It still kind of does, but this is where the Omega springs, I guess, stop it from being closed. That's, yeah, those springs are pretty freaking strong. But it did take a little bit for them to break in, and now I love this thing. I definitely do. Little nitpick that I had with the handles is that they are contoured slightly. No sharp edges or anything like that. No shadow boxing of the liners. It's just, everything's just nice and smooth. A little backspacer there. But the G10 is extremely, extremely smooth. I wish I had a little bit more texturing to it. And I noticed this when I was doing some gardening tasks and my hands got a little grimy. Even with extra grit on my hands and on this knife, I still found that I was slipping around a lot. So that's one thing to note. The blade is pretty darn thick, honestly it is. But it does come down to a rather nice edge. I did sharpen it up today, and this D2 takes a pretty good edge. So out of the other Sitivien knives that I've experienced. This one's probably like the heaviest duty feeling knife, even though it has the most fidget friendly action versus, you know, the other ones. I mean, I consider that more fidget friendly. It's just a little bit more satisfying. Another thing I noticed is that it kind of makes this quick little zipping sound when I go to deploy it, and it's because back here it's not the best machining, or I guess finishing. If I had slightly better camera quality, you'd be able to see these tiny little lines that when it, you know, runs across this this post, it just makes that noise. But I mean, I ignore it. For 30 bucks, I really don't think you can beat this. But this definitely does, in my opinion, beat the execution of what Benchmade is doing, and they are the ones who invented this lock. This is just another company of the many that have just taken advantage of the expired patent on the axis lock to be able to just throw it on one of their models. I think they have another one too. Sitivien has another model too that also has an axis lock, but I like this one a little bit better. And I think this just executed it better. So that is just my opinion. The blade shape, I think the only little gripe I had with it, and it's just because of the kind of work that I do, I cut a lot of plastic and a lot of boxes. It does come up a little bit, like kind of Persian-y, kind of just a little bit. I will probably end up cutting this blade or modifying it to be a, you know, drop point a little bit further down. If you can imagine that, just removing like that much, I think that would be awesome, because I'd be able to get to my boxes a little bit easier without having to, you know, be concerned about lifting up a little higher to, you know, slash the boxes and remove the product from things like that. I'd rather not, you know, destroy a bunch of product. So, especially because I work with stocking you know, products from the Coca-Cola company. Yeah, that's basically like stocking explosive devices all day long. So just a tiny little prick on a aluminum can or a plastic bottle, and you're just gonna have a huge mess on your hands. So that's something that I really would like to avoid. And I think by modifying this knife, I'll be able to call this a definite user knife. I love this thing. So it already does have some wear on the blade. It's not really coming up through the camera too well. I could see it in person, but it's really not coming up through the camera. But there are little streaks, little scratch marks from, you know, throwing it around in the dirt. I think you see them right there. Come on, right there. Those lines. There's like these lines there. So that's just because it's a satin finish blade. If this was stone washed, or, you know, just or maybe even bead blasted, I think it'd hide those scratches a little bit better. But satin is the cheapest finish that you can put on a knife, and again, at this price point, I'm okay with it. Pocket clip is just very simple bend steel pocket clip, just like all other models. It's not left hand compatible, which is unfortunate, but at least it is inset into the handles. Even though the screws are button topped, I don't really have an issue with this going into the pocket. It does get hung up a tiny bit, and I just give it an extra little nudge and it'll go in just fine. This one does have a large pass-through for a lanyard. Doesn't bug me. You know, I don't use lanyards, but I know plenty of other people do. They're the polished liners with very large holes for weight relief. If I didn't already do size comparisons, which I don't think I did, I don't have the official dimensions of this knife because it's coming from Amazon, and I don't really trust Amazon's dimensioning, but here's some common knives within the industry. Demco 80 20.5. I already showed the Benchmade Osborne. The Sitivien Elementum. And the Benchmade Bug Out. also have a para 3 lightweight. So I feel like that gives you guys a pretty good estimation of the overall dimension of this knife. I guess for thickness, we'll use a para 3 lightweight. It is a little bit more hand feeling, definitely. But for the most part, it's not that much bigger. So much slimmer design, of course. And yeah, I love this knife. I don't really have too many big gripes about it. Maybe if it was a little bit smaller, that's just me. I know this is definitely over 3.5-inch blade in my area here in California. Can't really have that, but in my place of work, there are no pocket police, so I really don't care. I would definitely recommend this knife to anybody who's interested in a extremely affordable, well put together, fidget friendly knife with a much harder use blade. Did sharpen it up today, and I have a little bit of cardboard here just to show you guys how it cuts. I think I just went up to 1,000 grit. No stropping, just because I know stropping doesn't really last too well with D2. I had a much higher grit, so I'd rather just keep it a little bit toothier. It helps cut through plastic and stuff a little bit better. I feel like I get better, I feel like I would get longer life out of it if I don't strop. So there's that. Cutting it against the grain. Feels pretty good. Very comfortable in the hands. I don't feel any specific pressure in any direction. Yeah, this thing's great. I guess in comparison to its closest rival would probably be the Osborne. The same dimensions for the most part, with a much larger length blade, but the handles are much slimmer. It is nice and soft, and it's not uncomfortable by any means, but it'll cut just the same. The blade stock is a little bit thinner on the Osborne, so we'll pass the material, but because the handles are much more filling on this model, I don't feel it. So like to me, I feel like it's the same amount of resistance, really. So, yeah, I highly recommend this knife, and to take a look at a couple other models of Sitivien. So I don't know how long they've been around, but they really have been impressing me. And if you've watched the other reviews on some other models that I purchased alongside this guy, yeah, this is a brand to really look at right now. So they might end up being like Sitivien, where they just start coming out with a crap ton of new models every year and just really surprising a lot of people. They have some kind of wacky color schemes going on with some of their knives, but I think eventually they'll kind of grow out of that. But as long as they keep up with the overall fit and finish of these knives, these guys are going to go places, definitely. And these knives are going to find their way into a lot of people's hands, a lot of people's pockets. So if they make them a little bit smaller, that'd be great, because there are some people that do care about and worry about pocket police. So there is that to think about. But regardless, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it.